and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teresa from the blog and YouTube channel free2flower.com, where I share all about our simple life on our European farm. The days are hot, even here in Europe. In fact, I would say we've been going through a little bit of a heat wave, which if you've ever been to Europe, most places do not have AC. That's right, it's been a real struggle bus. Although I will say I am extremely grateful, even more than usual, for the fact that we live in an old house. Our house was built in the 1800s and big parts of it are stone. All of it is made of brick, but parts of it are actually made with stone. And so certain rooms of the house really do feel as if they had AC, even though they don't. Very good thing to have if you're living in Europe. Another thing that's been happening in our fields is yarrow has been exploding everywhere. And this is such a common herb, especially here in the Czech Republic. I grew up with fields around our house and around our farm being covered in this herb. And for the longest time, I did not actually know that it had so many medicinal properties and that it was so easy to make a tincture. This year, I decided to change that, and I went out and harvested a bunch of it, made a tincture, which, by the way, if you would like the recipe, it's up on my blog. I will link it in the description box below. It is so easy to make and has so many uses. It's definitely a great one to have on hand. I have also been playing with my brand new dehydrator. We got a new dehydrator a couple months back now. I opted for a pretty large model since we have so many different herbs we dry, as well as fruit and other things. And so I have been putting it to work even with yarrow. I dried a bunch of it to preserve for the winter time so that I can make delicious herbal tea when me or my family need it. I don't know about you, but for our family at least, since I make fresh sourdough bread every single week, we always seem to have at least half a loaf of slightly stale bread on hand. And while our chickens and our horses and even our rabbits absolutely love stale bread, I sometimes feel like it's such a waste just to be feeding it to the animals after I've put so much work into making it. And so I am on a quest to find all sorts of ways to reuse and repurpose stale bread. And the one I'm trying out today is sourdough breadcrumbs. This is extremely easy. All you have to do is make sure that your bread is not hard enough where you can't cut it anymore. And believe me, I've done that before. So you have to catch it at just about that right stage when it's just a little bit stale but not too much. Cut it up, blend it in a blender. Don't overfill your blender like I did over there. You want to fill it only about halfway up. And then once again, I used my dehydrator for this. I spread my crumbs over some baking parchment and placed it inside the dehydrator, but you could totally just let it air dry as well. The tricky thing with this, and one thing to watch out for, is mold. So you will want to stir your breadcrumbs around if you are air drying and make sure that they don't get moldy on the bottom. You can then store them in a glass jar, use them in recipes. I love to add mine to meatballs. For example, my wild boar meatballs, that's a recipe I have on my blog. I will link it in the description box below, or plenty of other things. Krásný.
Je do hlíny.
To nevadí, ty se. I started a little herbal garden this time last year with just a few marigold flowers and a few different types of herbs, and I am so excited to say that everything continued growing, everything seeded out and expanded, and we now have a full, pretty large bed of marigold flowers. So my son and I went picking marigolds, which he loved. It's such a great little activity for kids and something that they can't really mess up and yet can actually be really helpful with. I love when I find activities like that around the farm that I can involve my kids in and for them to be actual help to me for real, even though they're still little. And this was exactly that activity. So we picked a bunch of marigolds and I am, surprise, surprise, dehydrating them. As you can see, our dehydrator really runs pretty much around the clock in our house this time of year, which is why I opted for the model that I did. If you want to see what dehydrator I have, or maybe you're on the market for one, I will link a very similar model in the description box below. I've been really happy with mine so far. The air circulation is great. It works really fast. It's pretty quiet and it has a very large capacity. So I went ahead and dehydrated some calendulas. I have a variety of things I want to make with those, but first up is calendula oil. This is such a great healing oil that I will then use, little spoiler alert, as a base for calendula balm that I will be making this fall. It's so easy to make. I'll have a recipe up on my blog and I will link it in the description box below. All right, a pretty specifically European thing we do, although I know you can do it in parts of the US too. We grow wild strawberries and you can find those in the forest as well, but we have a little patch that just started growing on its own in a corner of our garden that we helped along a little bit. My kids love going over there, picking the wild strawberries and tasting them. They have this really beautiful, fragrant taste to them that is very unlike large and standard strawberries. If you want to know more about wild strawberries and their benefits, I wrote a whole blog post about this. I'll link it in the description box below. And that is why you use that.
Yep.
Hot summer days call for some refreshing drinks, and yes, you did just see me break a glass. I could have easily edited this out, but I find it so funny and I love being authentic on my channel, and so I kept it. I wanted this to be a reminder that everybody makes mistakes. We all mess up. Things don't go as planned in my kitchen at least half the time. You just don't see it on camera because usually I'm not shooting when that happens. This time I happened to be shooting when my husband and I were making these delicious mocktails. We had so much fun working on this project together. He is so great at combining flavors and making delicious drinks. And so I enlisted him to help me come up with some delicious recipes for myself and my friends. I put them all up on my blog. I'll link that in the description box below if you want to try and recreate some of these. I love refreshing drinks in the summer, and I don't always want them to be alcoholic, especially when I'm pregnant or breastfeeding, or when I just don't want to be sleepy, because sometimes cocktails just make me sleepy. And these definitely do not. Quite on the contrary, some of these are actually more of a health tonic than a mocktail, even because of all the beneficial ingredients that we included. But anyways, part of this process, when we were working together, I got a little bit too rigorous and I did break a glass. Everybody was fine. There was no pieces of glass, just that one big chunk that fell off. But I wanted you guys to see that and perhaps to be encouraged. I think maybe I should do a series of shots of how my bread doesn't turn right. While most of the time it does turn out great, there are a lot of times when I mess up the timing, or something that seems to repeatedly be the issue for me is forgetting to add salt. So when I forget to add salt, surprise, surprise, spoiler alert, sourdough bread doesn't really rise and it turns out to be rather flat. Maybe I should make a series that's titled something like My Sourdough Fails, just to make you guys know that I make mistakes too, and all people who make YouTube channels and write blog post content also do, even though you might not see it.
That bubble to agitate it a little bit. little oversized. Better trim that up.
We used sparkling water or homemade kombucha as the mixer for all of these mocktails. And we added herbs from the garden, some store-bought fruit, and some wild foraged fruit like our raspberries or blackberries, and also some blueberries from our garden. All of those drinks were so delicious. Each tasted completely different. Some are sweet and tangy, some are a little bit saltier. Absolutely delicious for all of you who might not want to consume alcohol but still want a fancy looking drink to enjoy. If you are new to kombucha making, or maybe you want to try for the first time, or maybe you need to troubleshoot a little bit, I've got a bunch of kombucha recipes up on my blog. I've been making kombucha for a really long time, much longer than I've been baking bread or doing pretty much anything. I started making kombucha when my husband and I, well, actually even before we got married, and we've kept this up very consistently. So making your own kombucha is so easy, it's really fun, and it's just such a nice sparkling probiotic beverage that you can enjoy on hot summer days or even cool winter days. We drink kombucha year round and love it. I actually have a free kombucha making ebook that answers all your questions and has all the tips. I'm going to link it in the description box below so that you can go ahead and grab it and maybe make your first batch. The theme for me during the summer season is planning for the winter ahead, because it sure is coming, even though it feels like it's miles away right now. I know that the cold, dark days are going to be here sooner than I'd like them to. And then I will wish I had all of my garden produce on hand the way I have right now. So I'm once again taking to my dehydrator, taking everything that I have growing in my garden, all the surplus, and dehydrating as much as I can. I am making my own dried chives that I can add to spreads and dips and soups, as well as dried nettles for some nettle tea that I foraged around the farm, and other things that I know I will come to appreciate so much during the winter time. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button. Till next week.